Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining another LeadSquared Roundtable. This is specifically for EdTech. We are trying to decode the $30 billion EdTech market in India, and I have like a great panel today. As you can see, the EdTech inspiring women in India, really. And I'm personally very interested in this session. I'm so glad to see the panel today. So just a quick word about each of the members here. So we have Tanushree, she is the founder of Doubtnut. We have Meenal, the founder of GuruQ. Sonia, the founder of Himarticus Learning. Shrikala, who is the founder of Crackverbal, and Madhu, who is the founder of Clever Harvey. So thank you so much, ladies, for joining us and for giving us your time for the session today. With that, I will hand it over to Pallavi to take the session ahead. Just a quick word before I disappear. If you have questions, please put it on the question tab so we can see it, or if you have comments to pass, anything you like, dislike, just opinions in general, please do put that on the chat and we will respond to that. Apart from that, yeah, that's about it. Again, questions we will take up at the end, so don't get impatient. We will take up your questions right at the end. With that, over to you, Pallavi. Thank you so much for hosting it, and I'm just backstage if you need me.
Cool. So thank you so much, Shibani, for that introduction. And I think I want to personally thank Tanushree, Meenal, Sonia, Shrikal, and Madhu for taking time out. Running a company, I'm sure, is never easy. So thank you very much for taking an hour out for this. So I think obviously a lot of questions that we would potentially start with, but I'm going to start with a very beaten to death question, but to get a different kind of insight, I would like to start with Shrikala. I think you started Crackverbal way back in 2006. Before there was an EdTech, right? There was only education actually back then. So I think you've definitely seen the transition, right? When people were actually reaching out, and you obviously still have centers. I was actually checking on Google Maps yesterday. You do have Crackverbal centers still there, right? So would be interesting to know from you how the customer behavior has actually changed, like in the smaller aspects, right? People, what were they willing to pay you? Let's say when you were running your entire show offline, right? And how has that changed when post 2020, how has the behavior of the customer to pay changed? How has it changed for you to find teachers to train them to do, the GMAT coaching or whatever online? How difficult has it been to source teachers, right? For that matter, or any kind of challenge that or change in behavior you've seen across the teachers, who typically teach, and the students who buy from you. What has actually changed, let's say pre 2020, in the many years that you were running your business, and let's say after the whole pandemic? Any insights that you can share will be very useful.
Yes, absolutely. And I think it has been a journey in itself, right? So from when we started, it was all classroom. The marketing was a lot of word of mouth. We started as a Bangalore-based company, so it was more center-based. It was a lot of focus on who was teaching. Slowly we graduated to, in fact, we also tried the VSAT model where we started live streaming classes. And I remember that once we were live streaming one class in Delhi, and there was this student who came in and said, "Isse acha to main TV dekh leta," right? So that was the mindset that time, right? And moving on to a market till 2019, I would say, where we moved on to online, as we had both online as well as classroom. The acceptance of having an online course was not as much, right? So people still felt, and especially the target audience that we cater to are 22 to 35-year-olds.
Yeah.
So that audience still felt that classroom was a better option. They still needed to see a face, and they were not very okay with just the online version of it. However, post 2020, I think the acceptance has completely changed because there is no other option. The marketing has completely changed because now it's no more offline. There's no option for an offline marketing as of now.
Your BTL spends and all are like
BTL spends are slashed. Retail spends are slashed. Word of mouth doesn't work anymore. It has to be more branding. It has to be more digitally available online, right? So that has been, and in terms of reach, has expanded massively, right? So earlier, I remember we had 3 centers in Bangalore just because we could cater to 3 sections of the city, because how the traffic situation is in Bangalore, right? So now again, that is never a problem. There were people who said, "Oh, I stay in Whitefield, I can't come to Koramangala," or "I stay in Malaysia."
So none of those problems exist now.
None of those problems, exist now. So I think in terms of students, the whole thought process has changed completely.
Right.
In terms of hiring and in terms of getting good faculty, I think it has been a great advantage now, because now we don't have to bother about. In fact, our hiring was restricted to people who are 5 or 10 kilometers around the area, because that's how people thought, right? Especially, being Bangalore based, people said, "I can't come to Koramangala. I'm sorry. I want something closer by," right? So no, that has completely changed. My team is sitting in Jamshedpur, and somebody is sitting in Hyderabad, and somebody is sitting in Noida.
So you're able to like most people from everywhere.
I can really get good quality instructors now. So I think it has been a great advantage over the years. And we also felt, in fact, we always kept toying with this idea that we wanted to move 100% online, because business-wise, classroom
cost-wise, it kind of makes a lot of sense. Yeah,
because operational cost was very high.
Very high, yeah. But so I'm just curious, like in terms of people paying for the courses, right? Have you seen like any marked behavior saying when you were convincing them to pay for a course offline versus now where everything has happened online, right? The sales process and everything. Have you seen any change in the behavior of the student, or they're all very accepting of the fact that, hey, now everything is online and they're willing to pay for it and all of that? Like any
I have, at least in our business, I have not seen that change.
Not seen any change.
Yeah, because it's mostly people who are buying are the people who are paying. So I don't need to convince a parent in that.
Right, correct. The buyer and consumer is the same.
So in our business, I have not seen that
not
much.
Too much.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. So I think that's fairly interesting, Srikala. And I think I would like to hear from Tanushree also. I think at this point, right? I think you again, I think would have definitely seen a lot of change pre and post COVID, right? And I think Doubtnut's business model is also very interesting, that you don't cater to the tier 1 or tier 2 for that matter, right? You're focusing your product on, let's say, tier 3 and beyond. So I think that market generally has like a lot of challenges, right, in terms of connectivity or general tech adoption. So how has that challenge been for you, let's say, pre-2020 and after everything, right? What challenges have you solved for, and what still remains to kind of be explored for your kind of a product, Tanushree?
So Pallavi, first of all, I would like to kind of, in a way correct what you just said. So the way India is divided, only 15% of Indian population actually stays in the cities or the tier 1 cities.
Right.
35% population is outside of tier 1 cities. So if you were to make a product which is for all students, naturally that is what is the distribution of students is going to be.
Correct. True.
Right now, Doubtnut is the most used education app in the country in terms of the number of people who use it daily. Even within tier 1 cities, it is the one that is used the most. It is just because it is catering to every student in the country. It feels like we have more tier 3 and tier 4 students, because that is just the case with India, right? There are just far more tier 3, tier 4 students in India. So it is not like we catered our product towards tier 3 and tier 4 specifically. What we consciously did is that we did not make our product only English. So it was a product to everybody. Now, if we talk specifically about pre-2020 and post-2020, so even in 2019, September, October, at any point in time, whenever we looked at the number of users or the users who were using our app, what would come out is that the students, for 70, 80 or 60, 70% of the students, their first online access or first access to internet in their entire household for any student when they're using the app was in the preceding, let's say, 10, 12 months. So as the students were getting unlocked by internet, they were coming and lapping up on Doubtnut. So even right now, for our students, the most used app before Doubtnut is WhatsApp and YouTube. They are not using even the other social media apps, even the like the payment apps are not there on their phones. Now with 2020, of course, that got even further accelerated. Obviously, after the lockdown happened in March, third week of March in 2020, for the next 3 to 6 weeks, it was just a very sudden lockdown. So there was no real extra penetration of students. But as soon as the first set of unlock started happening, the first investment that students or the parents or the households started making was in buying phones, increasing the number of devices in the household. For students who were extremely poor, they were probably buying a second-hand phone. In places where there were already a phone existing in the household, they were adding a device to their household so the students could study online. So there was a rapid acceleration that happened post-COVID. In terms of the number of users who have come online, of course, the number has increased dramatically. In terms of the traction, there's obviously going to be some receding of that as the schools open.
Right.
Which is obviously the case because, right, I mean, once the schools open, 8 hours of a student's time is going to go into school.
Correct. So that's something that you've already forecasted for, saying that.
Yeah. I mean, in terms of traction, so in terms of number of students, they will continue to be the same. In terms of the number of hours they spend, there is just no way, right? I mean, for example, even for us, the amount of time we would say spending at home and maybe watching Netflix or watching anything, that would just suddenly just get lower as the things would open. You would start socializing, you would start doing other things in life, right? So that, of course, but the baseline has increased so much, and the students, this is the first time that parents and the students got the peek into the real schools. So school mein kya ho raha hai, tuition center mein kya ho raha hai, and what is the online real education offering you? So for the first time, they realized that the online education platforms are actually offering better education in a lot of cases than the offline centers and the schools put together. So that became a primary use case for a lot of households, and obviously as the unlock happens, there'll be some people who will move back to the offline, but there'll be a lot of, like, the penetration has increased a lot.
So there's a lot of adoption irrespective of, the kind of city. It's kind of gone up, right? And I think there are some challenges I've heard, right? Talking to a couple of accounts and talking to a couple of customers, that internet access sometimes is an issue, right? Because a lot of the content is live streamed. But I think that is also a problem that is, I think, getting solved.
Pallavi, I think that is that is another place where I think the companies who've been solving for all students in India versus only the students in tier 1, tier 2 are taking a different approach. So, for example, in our case, even the tuitions that we are holding are happening through what we call internally video on demand, but it's not really on demand. It's we are streaming it at scheduled times, but it's not live, because live the data consumption is very different. It's 2.5 times compared to videos, and we've taken a very conscious call out there because data is one of the most important entity to a tier 3, tier 4 user.
Correct. Yeah.
Basically, depending on how deep you want to penetrate, you basically take those product calls. Whether we are the only one who's mobile first. In most other EdTech platforms, what you would see is that they would basically say that your experience is going to be much better on desktop.
Yeah.
In our case,
you built it to work well on the mobile app.
Yeah.
Got it. So I think that's interesting, and I would kind of like to bring in Sonia also here. So Sonia, I think your segment is completely different, right? So you're looking at upskilling, right? And I think upskilling has been something that has been in vogue for a while. I think it's just obviously got accelerated because of COVID. But anything specific that you can think of in terms of what has operationally, or let's say customer behavior-wise, changed post-COVID? Any specific points that in this section of upskilling, which you have seen, drastically change?
Yeah, so I think it's similar. What we've actually seen is a lot of adaptation of tier 2 and tier 3 cities, audiences from there coming and taking all of these programs. I think COVID has really unlocked or opened up potential where these guys would typically not have great upskilling opportunities, whether it be in the physical space. And then I think with COVID and the hype or the news or the media around opportunities or the need for India to actually upskill, I think for us at least it opened up a lot of markets outside our main tier 1 markets that we were operating at. The second one I think is just adaptability. It opened up for us an entire section which would want student outcomes to be made. So whether it be degree, whether it be placement programs. So I think it opened up a lot of opportunities, and I think a lot of it actually had to do with a lot of media and conversations that companies were having, that fresh talent needed to be upskilled, and it was okay, and it was the need of the hour. So I think that, along with COVID, really propelled us in the right direction. So I think that has helped quite a bit.
Yeah, cool. That's very interesting. And I think everybody's business has obviously changed a lot since the pandemic. And I think one section of people that I see have one seen a lot of job opportunities, and also been disrupted a bit by the segment are teachers in general, right? So I think Minal, you might be the best person to talk about this. Your company obviously helps find teachers around you, and I mean, I don't want to be very specific, but a lot of teachers that we see, are women, right? Like in schools, in preschools, everywhere, right? So, how has the whole teacher, finding teachers, and how has your abstraction kind of changed, post the pandemic? And I think we see a mushrooming of a lot of apps which also bring the power to the teacher to come online themselves, right? Like you have Teachment and you have a lot of other companies there. So would love to get your thoughts on how this whole teacher ecosystem is evolving.
Sure. So, like I think Tanushree also said, sort of, pre-pandemic happened was focused completely on it.
Hey, Minal, I think there's some audio issues. If
Yeah.
you could just, yeah.
Hear me now?
Yeah, it's a little better. Yeah.
So I'm saying pre-pandemic, what really happened was that the focus was completely on offline education, right? Online was never really on anyone, even though we were all that would provide online as well as offline teachers. It always, the focus of students and the demand was always for offline. Online really didn't have any acceptance. And so obviously our focus was also on finding tutors and teachers that are willing to offer either coaching centers, or students can come over to their house, or they can go to the student's house. That was the main focus. So we would actually, our expansion plan, our whole plan was to go region by region, get all the teachers onboarded for a particular area, launch it in that area for the students, and then move forward. But what COVID really did, that it really captured us and the entire tech space, where suddenly, when online, suddenly there was demand for online, right? So what happened was we had influx of teachers actually registering on our platform from all over, because what we to teachers is we provide a dashboard, an entire inbuilt platform through which that they can teach their current students, and new students can come on board and find them. So it was basically empowering them to have a platform that they use, manage all their students, their payments and rebookings and everything are taken. So everything that they actually had to do when they were teaching offline, which was, go to the child's house, follow up for payments, get classes rebooked, all of that hassle was taken out. And now, obviously, because they couldn't have physical classes, they had access through a platform where students them, and they could get students from as well.
So,
That-
okay.
This change we saw, and what now we see is we don't spend a single rupee on teacher or tutor acquisition anymore. We have over 10,000 teachers a month coming onto our platform and registering themselves because they want to teach through the platform. And the platform basically empowers them to have manage all their students, like I said, through the dashboard that is provided to them, conduct through the platform itself, so it really takes that burden off, so they can completely focus on teaching. That's it. And it's not it's a very idiot proof platform, so every teacher can actually use it, because many a times you have, like you said, women, right? I get messages so often from women, especially housewives, that are all educated, and then they come on to Guru, become get certified, start teaching on the platform. Suddenly they're adding the household income of their house, and that actually,
Yeah, that's actually very interesting. Yeah. So I think, yeah.
many times, in fact, recently I got lady from a tier 2, tier 3 city wrote to me saying that it's because of the platform that today her mother-in-law, her husband, all these people around her actually respect her so much more. They respect her opinion. She's a household earner. She's bringing in income, so their respect. I mean, the way she was viewed by them, their respect for her, all of that is really increased. So I
Yeah.
think, women, men, women, everyone is actually put into a position where, they can actually add value,
Yeah.
platform, by just having access to a platform. I think that is something that truly makes me happy, because then we've done something right.
Hmm.
So yeah, so the teacher acquisition now has become really easy as well, because teachers, and it's men or women, all have realized the benefit of online education and how easy it can be and how it can supplement their income in a big way. Because not see, once the pandemic sort of gets a little bit better and vaccinated and all, are going to go back to offline. That's just the way our country functions. Now you can go that whether connectivity, traditional parents that want a child and a teacher to be sitting in front of each other, or various other reasons, it is going to go back to offline. But online is also going to be here to stay. It's always going to be that supplemental form of education and learning, because
Hmm.
that convenience of saving time, of saving money, of having access to everything at one place. So that's, people have seen the benefits now of online education, which people never really saw pre-pandemic,
Right.
I
Right.
mean,
So I think, yeah, those are good points.
online pado, it was never something that they wanted to do. The
Right.
pandemic, it pushed everyone to actually accept the benefits of online education and, really trust the process, so that going forward, it's going to be like everyone you love saying these days, learning, hybrid learning, it is what's going to be the future. And that is what I feel that our country especially is going to have. And like I said, yeah, both of these, whether it's offline or online, both are here to stay. They're not going anywhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
First,
So I think those are very very relevant points, Mina. And I think teachers. That's what I have also seen. Right, lot of teachers actually see a lot of ads, right, saying they're looking to hire a lot of teachers. So I think this is one ecosystem of people who are actually seeing better job opportunities and has seen some kind of disruption since the pandemic started, right? I want to switch gears a little bit more and talk about slightly touchy topic, but interesting topic, right? About how sales is actually run in edtech, right? So I think we see a lot of the sales is very vilified, generally speaking, more so edtech sales, right? So I would actually like to bring Madhu in, right, to hear if there is only one side of the story we typically hear, because that's generally how the world works, right? But Madhu, do you think there is a better way, or there is an empathetic way to kind of run sales teams? And how do you do it, right? How do you hire? How do you train? How do you find people? How do you retain people? Motivate people? Madhu is laughing already, but
I'm laughing because you've caught me on an interesting day for this question. Um,
okay. When you're going to give me a completely opposite example, I hope not.
I was reading the questions, and there's someone who said that, fresh talent doesn't want to come into edutech. It's feeling like the life insurance policy situation of being a
Yeah,
very push sales driven environment.
correct.
And do companies, edtech companies, really care about product or only sales?
Yeah,
And honestly, sales, the sales fake it till you make it does not work, because ultimately customers know when they're coming in if they're getting value or not. And there's only a certain point until which one can fake it till they make it. So the way that we look at our sales teams, just today, I smiled because we have our entire sales team that's come into the office for the first time since the pandemic began. And we have our facilitators in the office delivering the program for the sales team like they do for students. And it was just amazing to watch these adults go through the training we deliver for teenagers. And what they've really come up to me and said is, I didn't realize what we offer is so interesting. Or I didn't realize that this is the way in which it's helped me learn something new about the business world and the marketing world. Gosh, I can only imagine what the benefit would be for the teenagers. So to me, we're product people first, always have been, always will be, because if the product is robust and it delivers real value, translating that down to the sales team is critical. If they believe in what they're offering to parents, and they don't believe they're sitting there to meet a certain number or meet a certain target, but they're
right.
sitting there to genuinely solve a problem, then the achievement of targets will also come, and the
Yeah,
sales team won't feel like it's a A
it's a
ruthless
push.
work environment.
It's a ruthless
Push
thing.
sales work environment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's a that's a very interesting point, Madhu. And I just want to check, if Sonia, Srikala, Tanushree, Minal, anyone, you have anything to add there? Would be interesting to hear your opinions.
Yeah, so a couple of things we did was similar actually, and we had the same problem of I think EdTech, we forget that we are not a sales and marketing company. Actually, student outcomes actually matter, and we are there because we want to deliver a certain amount of value to this. So I think what we've started tracking very closely are engagement and referral rates. I think this essentially is a word of the mouth business. I think that is something that we should really track as a channel. And I think me included, we forget that because it's the other side is actually easy, right? You pump money, you set a great process, and the sales will come. How sustainable is it is depends on how deep your purse strings are. But if you don't have very great deep purse strings, then you have to go back to referral and engagement. The second thing we tried was very similar to what Madhu said. We started publishing our internal placement numbers, and we do hundreds of placements a month to our sales guys.
So they know the impact that you're creating. Yeah.
So that they know the impact that they're creating, and they started using these examples. That was not just one testimonial that we had on our website that they kept talking about. They actually started using. So I think that worked brilliantly. So now we've started live counters on our placements to show that, look, you're not just a salesperson, you're actually doing
so much more. You're actually helping someone get a job, possibly, right? Yeah.
These two things, aside from the normal process-oriented sales, has really helped us, and learnings particularly. So that's what worked for us.
Right.
That's very, very interesting, Sonia. So Tanushree, Srikala, Minal, anyone else wants to add any thoughts on this?
Yeah. So actually, we focus a lot on consultative selling. Also because the kind of audience we cater to, we've also Googled enough and read enough and researched enough before they have come to us. So most of our salespeople need to know not only the product but need to know the sector pretty well, right? So it's a lot of it's counseling, right? So they need to understand what they are talking about. They need to have an understanding of numbers, not only just the product. So I think the approach to sales, especially in Crackbubble, is slightly different, more because it's not telecalling. It's not telecalling, right? It's not just selling it's not a tech product that we are selling. It's the journey that we are trying to sell here, right? So from what they are, aspiring to, or their hope, or whatever they want to get to. So there's a lot of consultative selling involved that requires a lot of training. In fact, my sales team is, if I look at attrition, I think my sales team is the oldest.
Is it? That's very cool. Yeah.
Most
That's
of
very
us,
cool. Maybe you should share some experience here.
So the average experience in Crackbubble is at least 4 years. So,
That's you can see everyone's eyebrows go up. Yeah.
So I think that has kind of helped, and it helps being
so
more.
What do you do there, Srikala? I mean, even I'm damn curious. Yeah, 4 years is like crazy. I mean, what do? You give them like some special voucher, so you send them to a trip to Taj? Is it like what is it?
They get their incentives based on targets.
They
get their incentive based on targets. So I think it's completely incentive driven.
Okay.
So
I mean, anything that you do on the training side, or like what Sonia was mentioning, right? Do you like publish something where they see the impact of the work they've created? Any such practice that you follow that's helped to touch this 4-year very, very elusive kind of number?
So I think training is completely, it's on a daily basis. It's not like we have specific learning modules or anything, because every new student is a training for us. Because everybody comes with a very different kind of a background and a different kind of an expectations also in most cases. So I think it has more been, and what I also realized is a salesperson cannot perform, at least in the first couple of months, it is a lot of training, right? And then because they need to have a lot of industry understanding, they start performing only after the 3rd month in most cases, right? Unless they come with a lot of background and experience. But that requires, I think it is more building that, whole knowledge and understanding of the sector, that they also feel, they are like 25-year-olds talking to a 35-year-old and giving them gyan, but they still sound very knowledgeable.
Mature and
And
knowledgeable.
mature,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
So
yeah.
that also gives them a kick, right? That
Yeah,
they are
that's true.
trying to help somebody somewhere. So I think that's what has worked maybe in my case.
That's good to know. So I think I want to talk about how you guys actually get customer feedback, right? Like, so I mean, if we, Tanushree, if we can get your inputs, right? Like, you're building a product for students, right? And like you said, sometimes the parents are the ones who are decision makers, but the students are the one who use your app, right? So money is coming from somewhere, but the product is used by someone else, right? But how do you capture like customer feedback, right? Like, how do you know that, okay, I'm building the right things? Or do you have like some kind of process or framework you follow to capture feedback from all your students? And does it come from your sales teams or your product teams? How, like, do you have some kind of thoughts or framework on how you capture and improve your product offering, basically?
So, Pallavi, we have about 2 million users who are using the app daily. Because of which there is, I mean, it has to be a very, very automated process, and
Yeah.
you have to get the leading indicators, etc.
Right.
So, for every video that a student watches, they can give a feedback on that video, which is obviously a 1 to 5 star rating. Apart from that, there are NPS surveys that we run for our paid students. The third thing that we track is the engagement time of a student on the platform, as well as how well they are retaining across different weeks, different days. So these are the primary parameters basis which we kind of track the feedback. And then there are some qualitative surveys that are done for any specific cohort of students where we do feel that there is some, the NPS is probably not up to the mark as what we would want it to be. So we kind of take those cohort and we then run some qualitative surveys. We do some phone calls. This is just for inciting. But in terms of measuring the overall health of the system, it is primarily quantitative, and it is based on each interaction that they have with the platform. Of course, not on all interactions students are going to give feedback, but we capture a lot of data points for us to be able to make a sense of how things are going. Again, for us, I think because the number of people who are using it daily is so much that it is like even 0.5% or a 0.25% dent would mean that there's something wrong with the app that day.
Yeah. Right. So you kind of monitor all of these metrics,
Yes, yes, yes.
fairly closely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's, I think, Madhu, if you have anything that you guys also measure, or how do you like basically collect feedback to know that things are going in the right way, or
Sure.
yeah.
Yeah, it's the pulse of the organization. The day that the NPS goes down is when you know that nothing else matters. You got to fix NPS first. So we have quantitative and qualitative measures in place. Quantitatively, it's looking at two things: looking at completion of the program, because we run live programs. So if we see completion rates dipping, then the first thing is to look at why is the completion rate dipping. And the second one to look at is NPS. So we'll collect NPS for both parents and students, because very often, especially with the age group we cater to, which is 13 to 18, the parent might not even know what's going on. So they've paid for the program, they've enrolled the child, and
Yeah, but they don't know what's happening.
they don't know
Yeah.
what's going on.
Yeah.
So quantitatively, we look at the NPS for both. Because if the child is happy and the parent is unhappy, it means the parent just doesn't know what's going on. We need to close the loop with them.
Yeah.
And of course, if the child is unhappy, then we need to fix what's going on in our product. And qualitatively, each student graduating will leave us comments, and we have a methodical way in which we ask them to rate their facilitator, rate the content, did it meet expectations? And myself, head of product, CEO, will all look at that every week to see what is it that students are saying. It tells us more about what they want to learn, are they meeting expectations, what value we're delivering for them, but also what can we do to improve upon what we're already offering for them.
Right.
So
Yeah.
to us,
Those are a couple of things that you.
it's
Yeah.
essential.
Yeah. So Minal, you have any thoughts on this? Like, how do you guys, kind of track how your, product is doing, and also if you have to get feedback, right? I think teachers, again, very core to your ecosystem. So, how do you figure out that the product is going in the right way? Any tips, any tools, like, for people listening in?
Yeah, so of course, through the app, through the website, there's automated feedback we take from our but
Okay, Minal, I think there are some serious audio issues, yeah, at your end.
can you hear me now?
Yeah, it's better now, slightly better. Yeah.
So what we basically do is take feedback, through the app, through the website. At the end of every class, for example, the student, the tutor rates the class. The tutor is also, he or she rates how his experience was in class, parameters students are to account, understanding, blah blah blah. Parameters that are set into the system. So after every class, that feedback is being taken from the teacher and from the student to actually, that is that we create assessments, report cards, that for the student. And of course, we also have a customer service team, that also follows parents many a time. That it books the class and the student takes the class and the parents then don't really have any idea. So then our team is of course offline, feedback. Also, we have a quality assurance team that watches the videos, that monitors the performance, sees what it's going to be in the future. We're also building a lot of AI into the platform, so a lot of within the classes, a lot of parameters will be checked in terms of where a child looks bored, or where he seems to doesn't understand concepts, or various other things. So that's going to be inbuilt into the POC. So all the behavior of the child will end up determine which concepts he's very receptive to, and which concepts
He's not very receptive to. Got it.
all of those are being built into the platform as well. So we actually take feedback is a huge part of what we do.
So, I mean, out of curiosity, right? I read this article somewhere, so I just thought I'd check with you guys. So, there's somewhere I was reading, right? So, there are a couple of CEOs who kind of listen to like the call recordings, right, of their sales rep. They actually make it a part of their weekly or monthly routine to listen to actually what is being pitched, right? Because frankly speaking, those are the front faces of your product, right? So, do you guys actually do that? Like, it would be interesting. Yeah, like everyone is nodding their head. So, yeah, so it's like I do this type. So, yeah.
Team multiple times a day, so I can overhear them speaking to parents, speaking to students, understanding their tone. Don't want them to be very aggressive.
Yeah.
Various other things, whether they're following the process that whether the team leaders are being real team leaders, all of those.
Yeah.
How they
So yeah, great. Yeah, so that's I think anyone else, like I think maybe Tanushree, if you want to also chip in, right? Like I saw you also nodding your head. So do you also follow this? Do you also kind of get onto the floor and kind of listen to these recordings, and what do you typically do after that, right? Is there like some kind of training that is done?
Pallavi, we are, as a sales organization, we are fairly nascent right now. We've primarily been a product organization, and we are still kind of on a journey to see whether we want. I mean, how much of our entire selling process is going to be a sales team led. Having said that, as of right now, like listening to the sales call recordings is extremely important for us, especially because we are kind of reaching the student base, which is, one, we are not speaking to the parent at all. It is primarily the students. And we want to really make sure that there is no mis-selling that is happening. Our incentives are also structured in a way that there is no mis-selling happening. And like right now, the primary reason for us to listen to the sales call is to understand what is the kind of conversation that happens between the student and the salesperson, and how can we kind of translate a lot of it into the app itself. Because whatever way we think, we feel that if we like sales, at least so far as I see, given the basically the standardization of the pitch, etc., given the number of products, the number of different TGs that we have, is going to take some time. If there was a way for us to translate it through the app or through the platform, that would have been very good.
I think we've lost
there. So in the meantime, just until she gets back, I see so many questions pouring in. Okay, all right. So we have Pallavi back.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Go on, Pallavi.
Yeah. So really sorry about that. So Tanushree, I think I missed a couple of the points that you mentioned, but would be interesting to maybe hear from one more person on this topic. Sonia, if you want to add, right?
Yeah. So I think we're lucky in that sense that we've got a lot of offline and online touch points both. So while we do a lot of our sales digitally, much of our training is actually delivered through our offline centers. So I think that gives us a lot of insights. So I often sit in a classroom, and I think there is no other learning that you can do while sitting and going through the experience of that person, even if it's for 15 minutes a week. Speaking to them offline without them knowing who you are, I think that gives you a lot of insights to be able to understand what happened. How did you what happened from when the lead was entered? What kind of feeling did our counselors give you? How aggressive was the selling process? How consultative was the planning process? And I think that is a practice that we institute and then push back, because I think quantitative and qualitative measures, I think all of us do. It doesn't replace just speaking to them. So I think our offline touch points is something that we really, really encourage. And that's actually what gives us true answers on what's actually going on. The other thing that we've recently started is measuring impact 3, 6, and 1 year later. What happened, because we're in the upskilling space, right? The skilling outcome necessarily doesn't happen right when that student graduates or the learner graduates from that program. So what happened to him henceforth? So trying to automate that process, but we've taken some baby steps in trying to understand what happens to it, and then how can we take that back into the learning exercise.
Yeah, I think that's like really good points, I think. And I wanted to get into it because I just randomly got that thought, that I just read an article about it. So I was like, I just thought I'll ask you guys, right? So, I also wanted to get your thoughts on the whole, EdTech industry as such, right? You see there's so much consolidation happening. At the same time, there are so many companies kind of entering into the ecosystem as well, right? So, would be interesting to kind of, pick your brains on figuring out, or what you think of, is like the K-12 market segment saturated? Do you kind of see more, players kind of coming into this segment? Where do you see that going, right? Like, are there going to be more consolidations happening here, or there will be also consolidations and, let's say, new entrants coming in, right? So Tanushree, if you have, since you are like pro in K-12, right? So that's why I'm kind of trying to understand your view on this thing. Where is this K-12 segment actually going, right? Like in India, it's gone crazy. We have so many players, and there's consolidation also. So, yeah.
So India is, the biggest market in India as far as education is concerned as of right now is the K-12 market. It's been fairly unorganized so far until now. Even right now, whoever is the biggest player would be actually penetrating very in terms of just the amount of volume of sales or the volume of revenue that any big player is doing will be a very, very small fraction of what is going on offline. The entire market is so there is no big player in K-12 per se. There are big player K-12 offline per se. There are big players that are there for let's say test prep or other sort of segments, but nothing in K-12 offline. So one has to, if we were to think about K-12, we are not even scratching the surface as of right now in terms of being able to get the students to actually study online fully outside of school. So we are basically right now, whatever K-12 sales or whatever K-12 market is being penetrated for at least paid users is by way of quote unquote aggressive sales. Or I wouldn't even say aggressive sales. It's more like a supplementary use case to tuitions also. That is what.
And what? Okay.
Yeah, go ahead, Pallavi.
No, I just want to understand.
And that is what that is what the doubt that we are trying to change, and that is why what we are saying is that we don't want it to be, and we are taking a very cautious approach to make sure that we kind of stay product focused, so that we keep catering to what students need, and then slowly we make a business out of it. The reason is that as soon as you kind of embark on the journey of making a business, the easiest way out is to basically sell a 1 lakh rupee course for, let's say, 2-3 years, and maybe sell it to a few people, but make a ton of revenue. But then you are not being able to tap the market that exists. There is just
so you're taking the penetration approach, basically, right?
Have to take a so basically most everybody else is kind of looking at the cream, and this is which is also a good, as far as a business model is concerned, it's a great business model. But in terms of being able to able to capture the market, like the way Jio did for maybe mobile data.
Yeah, so that's the approach that you want to take. So do you think there is like room for a lot of more players if there are people on the audience who want to start a K-12 focused business today? Would you
Yeah,
go for it?
I'm sure there is a lot of room. The only thing that one has to think is that what is the use case that you're going to solve for students? How are you going to make it 4x better? How are you going to think about the students that are like you shouldn't get a supplementary use case to even tuitions, right? If that is the thing, then it is only going to be about money play, and whoever has the deepest pockets is going to win. But if it is about a true use case, students, like, there is just a massive unlock of students also that is left right
That's
now.
left to be
I think the
penetrated.
biggest disruptor in education right now is YouTube. Like,
Yeah, I
YouTube
totally
is where the
agree.
maximum
Yeah,
padhai is happening right now.
True. I agree.
yeah, I know you can learn so much from YouTube. That's true. I personally have learned a lot of things from YouTube. Yeah, that's very true. And I think that's, thank you, Tanushree. Very, very, interesting points. And I think one more question I had. So I see a lot of startups, not necessarily in the curriculum space, right? Especially for, let's say, children. Right from preschool to, let's say, schooling, right? Like Madhu, you are running obviously something to help teenagers find their passion, right? Like what do you do that's other than schooling? And then there are a lot of companies in the preschool market where there is no board, right, that exists, but they're trying to find a way to engage with that. So Shrikala, I mean, if you have some thoughts, right, is there a market, or how large is this market of non-academic related apps that are coming up that tap into helping a kid who's young find, I wouldn't say his true calling or her true calling, but basically do something beyond the curriculum, right? There are a lot of apps mushrooming in this space. So, do you have any thoughts on what this market is like? And
Right. Absolutely. I think, today with the professions not being just medicine or engineering or, the standard things that people were looking at, maybe a decade ago, every, like, for example, reactor is a profession today. A YouTube reactor is a profession today.
what's a
Right?
reactor?
I didn't
Sounds
even
like
know
some
that
huge
till last week.
sensation.
Yeah.
I didn't know that till last week, and they make money on that, right? That becomes a profession, right? So there are so many new things that we had not even heard of, and I think there is a lot of scope for these kind of avenues to be open for children too, and they need to know what are the kind of options available, or maybe even create one. I don't know. So maybe those kinds
So
of
there's a huge market
there is. In fact, the whole idea is that every parent has this question that are they in the right path? I don't want to force them. In my case, I have a 12-year-old. I have friends who are always worried whether I am actually honing the right skill. Right? Am I trying to actually encourage them in the right direction? And that's always a question everybody has.
So which EdTech subscription have you bought, Shrikala, for your 12-year-old?
So so I tried a math thing called Q Math because she really sucked at math, and she's doing some kind of a teen drama workshop, and that is again online. So again, just to try and figure out whether it's really is.
I think it's a very, 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 very important, and I think a very big problem to address. I don't know the market size of this problem, which is why I thought I'll ask better people than me to kind of answer that question. So if anyone else wants to take a stab at it, Sonia, Madhu, anyone, Minal, if you want to talk. Otherwise, I think we'll switch to questions because I see Shibani telling me, please stop and give time for people to ask their questions. So anything you guys want to add to this point of market outside of curriculum, basically? No. Madhu or Sonia or Minal, anyone?
I think what Hyderabad Junior showed us that coding can be done, right? And it can be done in a scalable fashion. And I think, as Shrikala said, there's a lot of outside domains. Like I have a 5-year-old, and I look for programs outside the curriculum that would add value other than what he does in school, or maybe when he starts going to school. So coding is not just the only avenue. Areas like problem solving, other areas I think could come up and really add value. So I think this is there to stay. I think there's a lot of opportunity there. And I think we've just scratched the surface in this space. That's all I know about it. It's only from a personal experience perspective.
Yeah. So I think Madhu is getting a lot of tick marks saying yes, kind of, for. I think she's solving some of these problems. So yeah, I think thank you, Sonia, for that input. And I think Shibani, if you want to kind of, I can't read through a lot of these questions. So if
Yeah, there are a ton of questions. So of course, we won't be able to take up everything, but we'll try to address at least some of them. So let me go with maybe Raju's question. So Raju says, and it's open to anyone. So please feel free to jump in. Raju says, pandemic acted like a catalyst for the growth spurt edtech startup witnessed. When things get normal, what will be the strategy for these edtechs, growth or retention? So anyone up for answering this? And I also noticed, Madhu, you are answering a couple of questions there. So thank you so much for helping us there. But is anyone willing to take this up?
Happy to. So it's really the same as when you had demonetization, right? When things go back to normal, there will certainly be some level of going back to how things used to be. But equally, the base rate for edtech adoption has gone up, and I don't think that's going to change, because what the last few months have shown us is that earlier online used to seem like an inferior version of being in a live classroom, and I think that perception's fundamentally shifted. What will matter is certainly having a differentiated and a compelling offering, so that people continue to need to be online, because there's no beating the physical space, there's no beating the interaction in the live classroom. But I do think that the base rate of usage has gone up and will continue to stay up, and now the onus is on us to be compelling enough to be worth it to be online, as opposed to being in a regular classroom.
Sure. Okay. Anyone else has anything to add, or should I just move on to the next one? Okay, so I will just go on to the next one. This is from Shurud. Just forgive me if I mispronounced your name. So he says, kindly throw some light on best practices incorporated by the panelists in engaging the customers using cutting-edge technologies like AR, VR, LMS, student information system for greater customer retention and engagement. So on the tech front, essentially,
I think gamification is a very important thing, especially to attract younger students. You know, for an edtech platform, the more you try to gamify your platform, the more you have rewards, the more you incentivize them to come back on your platform. I think that's going to be a huge part of it. This is besides your, of course, your AI and ML and all of that anyway, that you have to inbuild to understand the consumer behavior and stuff like that. So that anyways, I feel is a given now in today's day and age. It's a very important aspect for any tech company to have some form of AI and ML eventually built into their platform, so that the user experience and whether it's recommendations or whether it's, you know, understanding their behavior or their study pattern or their learning pattern, you know, of course, those things are very important. But at the same time, it's important to also, especially for the younger students, you know, when you gamify things and you incentivize them to actually come back on the platform, and, you know, so that they want to keep coming back. And, you know, every morning, like, you know, when you wake up, most children today look at an Instagram or look at a Facebook. You know why? Because they really pull you into the, you know, they pull you in through various things that they do. You know, they sort of make it addictive. I'm not saying edtech platforms should be addictive, but, you know, students should want to come to the platform because you've made it interesting for them. If you made it easy to use for them, you know, they want to come back. Maybe you know, reward them for the amount of classes they've taken, you know, things like that, things that just make them want to learn more and keep wanting to come back to your platform. And that's just not one thing. I think it's a mix of various things, including your gamification, AI, ML, you know, all, and plus the user experience has to be very good. The user interface, the UI UX has to be very simple, very easy to use, you know, so that children of all age groups can really come onto your platform and make the most of it. You know, you want to idiot-proof things, especially in a country like India, you know, where people may not be as tech savvy. So you can't just think of one particular section. You have to, I mean, depending on what your business entails, but it's ideally you want to cover the entire spectrum.
All right. Thank you. I will take up Abhinav's question. Now, that's the first question that came in at about 5:10. So, like, just shortly after the session started. So Abhinav's question is, how is personalized learning going to help as growth lever for new age edtech startups, while most of them work on typical live class broadcast in order to monetize?
Right. So Yeah, I read this question first. So let me just give it a stab. So I completely, the whole online edtech or everything cannot be completely tech driven, especially, that's what I have sensed in my business. There is a lot of touch involved too. So it has to be a tech plus touch. It cannot be a completely touch kind of a thing, because ultimately we are, interacting with humans, right? So if it really, unless it is something that doesn't require any touch, but when it comes to learning, I think a lot of touch in terms of feedback, in terms of understanding behavior, in terms of even getting, NPS is still a number, right? But there is some kind of feedback which can be captured through talking to them, could also be a very important thing. I think more from a personalized learning journey, I think only tech will not work. It has to be a tech plus touch going ahead for even scaling up, or even for a company to be successful.
Okay. And one more question that came in really early on. So Abhinandan, this is your question. He says, it's about buying trends. He says, how do you feel the market is shaping up in terms of last mile delivery?
So what does last mile delivery mean over here? Are we saying in terms of being able to connect to the product, or are we saying in terms of being able to make the payment?
Abhinandan, please elaborate then, because I am clearly not the person to. Yeah, just if you can elaborate there, and then we can take your question, because I know you asked this fairly early on. Let's see which are there are just so many, but I am going to take up another one from. Okay. Wow. Okay, from Amit. He says, don't you think blended learning will be the future, because students will just be fed up by attending classes online? Also, how do we increase ticket size in online courses only when the similar courses are available at dirt cheap prices or even for free?
I can take that. I believe that. Actually, I think, one of the reasons that EdTech has done so well in the last 2 years is because it was the need of the hour. There was no other option. We all had to go online. In fact, when last year all of our centers literally shut down in one day, and I think we were all forced to go online, and we adapted to it. In my view, I think blended learning will be, if we want to maintain this momentum, I think we will need to have blended learning strategies. There will be people that need to replace that feeling of being physical, being able to talk to their peers, talk to their teachers. So I think that model will need to stay, it will need to survive, and we'll all have to figure out how to make it work in a more scalable fashion as such. And there's a lot of ways to do it, but I do think that we need to realize that this is perhaps one of the reasons reasons to also drive outcomes, because at the end of the day, I think that's the only thing that matters, is that whether you're able to drive learner outcomes, and how do you do that in just a virtual environment. I think there's no one clear answer, but the need of the hour will change as things open up, as it has previously as well.
Sure. Okay. I think with that, we can conclude. Pallavi, if you have any final thoughts to add, but otherwise, I must say, as a first-time moderator, this was a great session. And based on the response we got from the audience, yeah, it's definitely been a wonderful discussion. So back to you again, Pallavi.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so I think thank you all, for participating and taking time out, and I think it was a fairly interactive session, and I'm glad you guys participated. I wanted to actually ask if completely off topic, but if there is a book or any recommendation you guys want to make, let's say to people who are looking to start their own tech or start their own company, if there's any such reference that you want to share, some book that you learned from, or some leaders that you follow on Twitter, anything for that matter that you want to kind of share with the audience as a parting thought. Anyone, if they're interested, that would be pretty cool.
Yeah, so I've not followed too many books, etc. One of the things that came very naturally to us, and which I think has been a very big differentiator for us, is to be able to understand the student And it is not theoretically. Basically, it is. Um, whatever you think, there are too many gaps between us as founders or us as senior leaders and the current student that is there. It is based on the kind of privileges we had. It is based on the kind of internet penetration that is there. It is the kind of attention spans that are there. What are the payment modes? There is just way too much difference. And for us to be able to make a product that is going to impact them and therefore sales are going to follow, it is extremely important for us to like really understand and isolate yourself from the student. Because the moment you think yourself, at least for the masses, the moment you start thinking about yourself as being the student, or your daughter or your son as being the student, even though you would love your daughter or son to use the product, it may not be the product that you want to build depending on what the target segment is. So extremely important for you to go down deep and understand everything, from the sensibilities, from the kind of language they use, from the kind of places where they use their time, what sort of devices they have at their place, what sort of internet connectivity is there, what is their final aspiration. So for some people, the final aspiration could just be to become a police officer, or it could be like something which is very different, maybe to become a salesperson at a mall, and that in itself is what they want to aspire for, and maybe a spoken English course is very important for them then. So it's extremely important for us to understand the student.
Sure. Thank you so much, Tanushree. If anyone else has any final thoughts, please do share, or we are good to conclude for the day. Thank you so much for giving us your time and taking us through this session. This will be published on YouTube, so anyone who missed it halfway, you can always go back and view it there. With that, I would like to say goodbye again, and thank you so much for inspiring us all and having this wonderful discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us here.
Bye. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.